Good morning, folks. And on this cold March day, we are going to have a very interesting talk by our friend David Roberts. And his talk today is introducing Sidcot School. David.
Thank you, Ray. Well, it's a bit more than that as well. I'm going to throw in some wild diversions of following my own particular interests, and then return to Sidcot as well at the end. I'm the clerk of what's called Sidcot General Meeting, which is a sort of quango, I suppose, of Britain Yearly Meeting. And its primary functions are to meet once a year and ensure that the governors of the school uphold and maintain the Quaker ethos in the school. It appoints members to the governing body. It's not the only body that can do that. The governors can appoint governors themselves, so it's a mixed responsibility with the governors. To receive the annual report and a spoken report on the school, which is usually a collaboration between the head and the chair of governors, and the accounts, and discuss the report and accounts or broader issues of education and financial policy. So it's a sort of meeting of oversight for the school to attempt to guide it towards a Quaker path. The school itself has embraced the Quaker ethos and faith as a unique selling point to quite a large extent, and has a number of activities and features in the daily life of the school that offer the possibility of involvement in Quaker activities throughout the working week of the school, and at weekends as well for boarders during term time. There's a monthly event where a speaker is invited to talk on the theme of Let Your Life Speak. And there are weekly gatherings for worship that years 8 to 13 can attend. There's a feature called Quaker Space at lunchtime on Wednesdays, which has fostered various sort of semi-charitable activities of making crafts and useful things like that, and organised an expedition to a Quaker school in Lebanon last year, I think, which 16 students went on. So that's a very brief introduction, but I want to jump across to a sort of separate concern of my own, which is completely unconnected, other than it illustrates what might be the benefits of the school in a way, because I went there when I was a kid. So it's a question about existential question, really. when I was at school, there was a strand of interest, people buying books and lending them to each other and so on, and books in the school library as well, of science fiction, which I pursued to some extent. And it's sort of, I'm not sure whether it was a feature at the time in the 60s of science fiction then, or just before then, probably quite a few decades before then, accumulated body of literature and short stories, mainly short stories, which were very effective in exploring ideas and the sort of what if scenario. And they led me to a path of thinking that has proved useful to me personally. And one thing that I've encountered is the concept of our situation as intelligent life and how relatively transient and recent we are in the other scales of time in what we think we know about the history of the universe. So we're a real blip, and there are arguments that maybe blips like us are occurring all over the universe all the time. But equally, there's no evidence that they are yet. So the proposal that I've come up with is that for as long as we don't actually have any evidence of life elsewhere in the universe, let alone intelligence elsewhere in the universe, then we possibly constitute the unique example of the universe being able to think about itself. You know, that agency is embedded in us. That's what we are in a way. So then, thinking to the future and what we might lead to, it's possible that in some distant future we might, or our culture, our descendants, and we don't know what that will be, and it seems plausible that we might hand over to some machine-based intelligence which isn't tied to the cycle of life, the spring, summer, autumn, winter of birth, growing up, and then dying, having children, missed that bit, yeah, and then dying. Whatever our descendants turn out to be, then if we think it at all interesting that in the long term we might be able to manipulate our environment, the universe we find ourselves in, and unknown possibilities of exploring other universes, perhaps. Who knows? If we think that potential line of exploration is at all interesting, then to the extent of that interest, we impose on ourselves a responsibility to survive. So it's not just the limited concept of us or mankind or life on Earth surviving. It's the survival of that opportunity for the universe to grasp a hold of itself and determine its own future in some way. So if we find that interesting, that possibility, then we ought, as a primary long-term goal, to take steps to assure our safety on this earth. And one way we can do that, no, not just on this earth. Supposing the earth is hit by an asteroid, if we lived in two places at once, if we colonized Mars or had a viable, survivable colony on the moon, that's one aspect. The other is to have some sort of sentinel system to detect whether there are any threats approaching or unknown influences from around the solar system and in the solar system. And there's been quite a bit of discussion about predicting the path of asteroids and making sure that we're safe in a timescale of 50 to 100 years maybe. But recently, and very recently, and this is also, I mean, it's ludicrous how recent everything is when you think about it, that 100 years ago, people were wondering about Einstein's theory, and here we are. It's all changing so fast. But in 17, I think, an object was detected which wasn't traveling in the plane in which everything rotates around the sun. It had arrived from about 45 degrees to that plane, passed between Mercury, the closest planet to the sun, and the sun, and was on its way away from the solar system when it was detected, having turned around the sun and shot back through the plane of the ecliptic, which is that plane that all the planets and everything revolves in, and leaving somewhere through the orbit of Mars or something like that. And its closest approach to Earth was on that return leg to the orbit of Earth, I should say, not the Earth, the orbit of the Earth, and it was about maybe a quarter of the distance from the Earth to the sun. So that was the first historical detection of an interstellar object. And there was another one detected in 2019, which was somewhat more distant from the Earth. It was about 1 kilometer in diameter, a comet. But that again came from a direction which ruled out its involvement with the solar system. And then there was a retrospective examination of meteor tracks that the Department of Defense in the States did in 2022. And it detected something about 1 meter in diameter that had passed through the solar system in 2014. So it seems likely that there's 1 or 2 every 10 years or something. But, you know. But who knew? Nobody knew. So when I first wrote, I wrote to this theoretical physicist, Paul Davies, after a lecture he gave on the Goldilocks theorem. in Bristol in about 2006, explaining my concern about our lack of detection of interstellar threats. Nobody had even detected one at that point. So, you know, there are lots of opportunities here. It may or may not be a new thing, but it has the advantage, doesn't it? I hope you agree, friends, that it restores in our science-based ethical framework some extreme long-term horizon that we can look towards and work towards, which is always a useful thing for mental health, morale, and things of that sort. So I think it's an idea which is to be recommended, if only on those grounds, that it's a helpful stabilizing influence on what can be quite a turbulent arena of public discourse, to have a long-term objective. And I think it stretches the term of long-term, but as far as you can go, and it's open to all sorts of possible discoveries in the future. So that's one concern that I had. On a separate tack, another one was about I was brought up by Quakers in a Quaker family, and I've got a long history of ancestors, some of whom went to Sidcot school as well, and were Quakers when you got thrown out of Quakers if you married out of the faith, and that sort of era.
Oh.
But Quakerism to me seemed about the best tool. When I returned to it, aged 45, I think, about the best tool that was readily accessible to me to adopt, to try to pursue a constructive social life. And I think it's not too bad, and I haven't encountered any others in the meantime, but I haven't been looking either. So, you know, there might be, I don't know, theosophists or who knows, things I don't know anything about, equally qualified, but it does a fair job, except on outreach. And I observed that that Quakers are pretty energetic in attempting to invent a process of outreach and discovering new ways that they can do outreach, and all the while sort of looking out to what can they pick up and use to help encourage people very actively to join the society. And all the while, there are these locked away at the front of the Red Book, the pearls of wisdom of the society in the advices and queries. And they are untouched. They appear incidentally as touchstones, but they're not employed in this outreach effort. And it occurred to me after some while sort of musing on this at various times, that their conciseness and power were fitted very well to being adverts in the London Underground. Partly because the London Underground imposes a sort of meditative state, and you either look at other people's feet or you look up at the ceiling. And the ceiling's got these strips of tube advert panels, which have been used in the same way by Poetry on the Tube, or whatever it's called. And you occasionally see a poem from that on these panels. But the advices and queries are, you can get them all onto a panel. It's just you've got to change the font. Some of them are a bit longer than others, and some of them are short. So I thought, without attempting to choose, the honest thing would be to put whatever we've got, plus the advice from friends at Bowlby, and the thing about striding adventurously, which I think is a sort of addendum. So I think there are 42 or 44 different items, just without any favour, putting them up there, because you can think of them as an altruistic aid or gesture to the mental health of people, of a certain subset of people travelling in the tube. Who knows? I mean, there's a broad spectrum, and you can, in discussing this, all sorts of people have been very generous with their offers, suggestions for improvements. You know, what about putting them in buses? Well, there's so many other distractions in a bus. It's not the same thing. It's just not the same thing. Some people might think they're strange. Well, that's not the point. It's the 0.01% of people who are struggling with something that they don't quite know, who could potentially be helped by one of the 42 panels, you know, and they might see that one or they might not. So it's an exercise in random support, really. And I've discussed it with the recording clerk, whose name escapes me at the moment. And he offered...
Paul Parker? You mean Paul Parker?
Yes, Paul Parker. And he understood the concept and offered a helpful suggestion of putting Quaker, www.quakers.org.uk in small letters at the bottom of every one, so that people will be able to find out where it came from, at least. But that's all it needs, I think. So the way it's been left is that it's my project to attempt to contact Transport for London and see if they're up to an appeal from this observation that it's an altruistic gesture, and whether they would support it to the extent of the costs. The other possibility is that one of you watching might have a spare $250,000 that you think might be an interesting, this might be an interesting application for that, which is what it would take to be a sort of significant representation for 6 months to a year on the tube. But I haven't taken it further at the moment, partly because I'm clerk of Sidcot General Meeting, which has occupied a fair bit of time. So that is my peregrination through 2 ideas that have occurred to me and are still left with me as sort of ongoing projects. And I return to general observations about Sidcot School. It is a place, well, I mean, I can't say what part Sidcot played in my later mental life, but I'm pretty sure that it was to some extent the gathering of minds among the pupils. And it was, I mean, people often talk about the teacher who influenced them, the teachers were just part of the curriculum for me, and it was the people I met at school were just so critical in their thinking and unfettered in their thinking, or the ones I noticed certainly were. And that was then. That was several generations, turnovers of children cycling through the school, staff, heads, and who knows what a child's experience is like anyway. This is the difficulty of being individuals. If in a machine intelligence age we were able to exchange thoughts, well, it'd be possibly one big continuum of thought across all the intelligence, but who knows. I think it's worth thinking about the opportunity that Sidcot offers for Quakers as a laboratory for education, as a place from which the world may be changed. It's instructive to think, I mean, how often one personally has an opportunity to improve the world, and it's pretty small, really. So the best approach is some sort of collaboration, I think, and particularly if that collaboration endures through generations, which is what the Society of Friends has. And certainly in the last 100 years, it seems to have morphed into quite a potent interrogative tool for the examination of our life collectively. Um, so returning again to Sidcot, it can be viewed as a research lab where we try out the operation of Quaker community in a limited sense, and equally we propagate into society people who have taken benefit from the experience of living in that community. Any questions? Well, there's only 6 of you, so
I
when the hundreds flock to view this later, they can ask me answers on a postcard, you know, that sort of thing.
I would I believe that Quakers also believe that education is important and it should be for all Quakers.
Mhm.
I'm afraid Sidcot School doesn't even pass the first bar on that, because it is a elitist fee-paying establishment, which many Quakers cannot afford to send their children to. So the first premise would seem to be that, yeah. So what is Sidcot for these days?
Well, there are Quaker bursaries, so that if you're a Quaker wanting to send your child to the school, you'll get a substantial relief on the fees. It'll still cost. And that's, I mean, I would hate to find that Quakers thought that we should dissociate ourselves from the school because it was of that elitist persuasion. It's what we have at the moment. It's our opportunity to see how it goes, to learn from it. It's in operation. We don't have to convince some head of a local egalitarian access school to allow us to attempt Quaker experiments in their school. We've got one of our own that is running and working along the lines we would hope it should already. So that's a big justification to my mind.
Rosie.
Thank you, Dave. I did manage to attend one of the general meetings at Sidcot School a couple of years ago. Just as a Quaker individual, I was curious to know how it worked and so on. And I was so impressed with the range of Quakerly activities, if you like. The young people gave examples of projects they did around Holocaust Memorial Day, cake sales, craft sales, and so on. There are different activities to support refugee families. So a lot of kind of good works in the mix. In relation to its pupil population, Sidcot School, like all the schools, I think, across our land, are struggling financially, or a lot of them are. And the overseas students were hugely important. That was something I picked up at the meeting, to help, fund the school and help it go forward. But actually, those students were a huge bonus to the life of the school in terms of broadening the minds of local young people and bringing them into contact with people from different faiths and different cultures.
Yeah.
And so it really added a richness to the school experience, if you like. Yeah, so as I said, I was delighted to have had that opportunity to meet pupils and the teachers and hear what actually goes on. Thank you.
The general meeting also appoints Quaker visitors who go into the school and attend some of these Quaker events and talk to pupils about their experience. And and report back to general meeting. That's one element of the general meeting's business, receiving the report from the Quaker visitors. And 2 Bristol friends are picking up that activity as Quaker visitors this year. So we look forward to seeing them.
Christopher.
Chris is on mute.
You're
Yeah.
muted,
Well,
mate.
yes, I know. Yes, this is quite a few years ago now, but I used to be for many years I was the area meeting rep to Leighton Park Quaker School, and if Ray thinks Sidcot is exclusive, he should visit Leighton Park. But I mean, I could get there by public transport from Bristol, whereas getting to Sidcot to go to their general meetings or whatever by public transport was, you know, a nightmare. So I don't know much about Sidcot, but and I found it interesting in the time I was there, and it almost seemed that well, no, I'm not, let's not say that. That, you know, the Quaker part of the school or its ethos became more and more important to them. And partly as it, I assume it's Sidcot, because they're in competition with a lot of other fee-paying schools. And, you know, you need something, you know, special to offer. And it seemed to me, and particularly having known some ex-pupils of Leighton Park, that in fact, you know, the school has definitely got, you know, had got more Quakerly over the time rather than less. And I must admit, like Dave, I do tend to take a pragmatic view. We've got these schools. It's a bit like Quaker Oats. Even if we disestablished them, they'd still be there. And while we can influence what goes on, I think it's important that we do. And, you know, yes, and I mean, sometimes we've actually, I think there have been 1 or 2 occasions where we've actually gained members from people who've wanted to send their children to a Quaker school. So they've started attending meetings so they can get the bursary. And, you know, have got sucked into it. So, and I think also they're one of the reasons that we punch above our weight. Because I know when I was some years ago, I did a search through the Dictionary of National Biography to find the Quakers, and what was interesting there was the number of other people who were in the dictionary who'd actually attended a Quaker school. Yeah, mind you, you know, I don't know whether, can't see whether Ray's fuming at the ears. I mean, a friend was telling me this morning that Friend's House have told the Quaker Socialist Society they can't ask Jeremy Corbyn to a meeting at Friend's House, at the only meeting. And that does sound, you know, seem to me to be wrong. You know, just be, so anyway, rant. Shut up, Christopher. Go back to doing.
Your representative from Bristol area meeting at the next general meeting in 3 weeks' time is Kathy Nile.
Yeah, and I mean, I expect, get a lift down with her if she wasn't doing anything else, but whether, as somebody's pointed out recently, I've got, you know, I've got too much on, and I've just taken on another thing things, so probably. But we'll see. Yes, I'll give that a thought. Thank you.
There's lunch at the school at 12:15, and the meeting starts at 1 p.m.
Yeah. And do you get? I mean, at Leighton Park, we used to get tours around the school given by the children in the morning and various things like that.
It's possible, but we haven't fixed that part of the program yet. So
Right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Let's mute myself.
I won't go too far in this, but as friends would know from my views in the past, boarding schools are an anathema to me. They contribute. I don't think they contribute anything. Can contribute less to the way of life of the child. But parents have children because they want to have their children up, one assumes, at weekends and holidays and stuff like that, and do things with them after school and everything like that. And you can't do that if you sent your child away to some other establishment for them to look after them and them to teach them skills, which you should be doing yourself, parent. Which is, to me, is one of the main reasons why I'm against such things. But then again, I say that, and I will now be quiet about it.
Well, Ray, I just observed that it's a quirk of biology that you only get to know 2 generations, or maybe 3, if you start early after you. So what if biology had been different? What if you gave birth and died? You know, it's just the way we happen to have fallen out of society, and I don't see any fundamental reason in needing to restrict yourself to living with your children. I mean, it's a bit arbitrary. It's a choice.
It's a wrong choice as well.
You think so?
I'm sorry, David, but I can't resist that back to that. You know, I spent 20 years of my life working with problem children. That was my profession for 20 years, and the amount of children I've had who have gone to the major private schools and have come out in such a bad way that it has ruined a lot of lives. So I do not say this lightly in this sense. I know from what I'm talking about.
Well, the evidence is there in our body of art, isn't it? In plays and films and testaments of people who've been mangled by that system.
Christopher.
Yeah, just because I can't resist contradicting Ray. All right, yes, there. I many years ago, when I was middle-aged, I used to help out with the Leaveners, and they were based at Letchworth School, and we had one of the pupils there who stayed to, you know, show us around, and got to know him. And in fact, he got involved with Quakers over the years. I don't think he is anymore, but he'd actually been placed at the school by his local authority because he and his parents couldn't get on. So it does happen the other way round. But I mean, nothing's perfect after all. And I can remember being stunned when I discovered one of the major problems they have at Leighton Park, which is a boarding school, and they even have day boarders, you know, so that children can spend longer than just the school hours at the school. But one of the major problems they have is with children being late to their lessons. Now, that just, so they now have to fill in chits all the time, but, and they do tend to have different problems than, other people, Well, unfortunately, the plane was late and we landed at, blah, 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 but it seems to me, it seems to happen for the people who were there, full time anyway, and I can't see any, yes, almost feel like, well, my school where there was always the cane if you, got out of line. So I behaved myself. It's probably why I'm such a naughty person now, but no.
David.
Dave, I really apologize for showing up late. It's an aberration occurred. Although Chris is just talking about showing up late for lessons. For some reason, I thought it was Thursday. This happened again. I got a message from somebody talking about showing up for something. And I thought, well, but that's on Friday. And then I thought, oh my God. And here I am. So I look forward to recapturing the first 20 minutes, and I'm really happy that somebody did start the recording.
You missed the best bit, Dave.
Sorry?
You missed the best bit.
Well,
So,
no, I will get it on replay. I'll get it on catch up, so it's going to be all right. But I was thinking of schools, and schools that I admire and like, and kids that I like from schools that I admire and like. And I sort of when this little list occurred, starting with Quakers, I was thinking of Montessori, and then Krishnamurti school, and then there's a Tikos school in Russia, which is a school that the kids actually built themselves, and then Steiner schools and a Maharishi school that I know well in Lancashire. And then I thought, well, I haven't come up with any. There's the academy schools. Well, I don't know any of them, but I don't like the idea of being funded by capitalism. And then I came up with Millfield. I've got friends who had a couple of kids go through Millfield. And it's only when Ray mentioned the problems of kids going through the well-known state schools, I thought, oh God, yes, there's that whole bunch. And I put them in a different category because to me, they're all really in service of colonialism and the British imperial state, which is, I think just saying that gives my feeling about it. But these other schools that have been based on really interesting thought leadership that is typically spiritual in origin really has got a wonderful tendency to bring up children who are themselves really interesting. And I recognize that in many cases that has meant them being boarding schools, but to me everything happens in life. Life is diverse, and it's through observing the diversity that we often grow. We can draw conclusions, get new ideas, and humans are sufficiently adaptable that most of us sort of managed somehow to survive whatever our early origins were. So yeah, I look forward to going over what you've said and posting it.
Yeah, well, I very much invite and welcome your friends of Bristol area, particularly, developing your interest in the school and supporting it, and hopefully over the coming years, helping it to stay on track, because that's the function of general meeting, to guide and, as long as they'll allow us, to influence by selection of governors. Who select the head? Who selects the teachers? Who teach the children? Who emerge at the end and then change our lives? So,
yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, my friends. Christopher.
Whoops. Sorry, I was just muttering that we've got minutes or two. So that I was going to say how interesting I found Dave's ideas on human beings and other, you know, the shortness of our, you know, being around, and the even shorter period where we're actually able to take notice of things happening in space, because it echoes some of the things I've thought over the years. You know, because you know, the things like, you know, if that meteor hadn't hit, which ended up with the dinosaurs being wiped out, you know, would human beings have had the space to develop, or would we be like the Twix adverts where you've got the two bears at the background saying, yes, yes, they crunch nicely when you bite into them, and that. So, and knowing that Ray's got an interest in science fiction as well, and I read quite a bit in my teens, and yeah, so thank you. So,
Remember, folks, we are not alone in this universe.
Well, I may be jumping in a. I actually joined this meeting on the word interstellar, Dave. So I'm really wanting to find out what preceded that.
Oh, it's a simple concept that until we discover some evidence that there is life anywhere else in the universe, anywhere, the responsibility on us, if we're interested in manipulating the universe as an agency ourselves, is to survive.
Brilliant.
And then I invoked the interstellar object Umar,
yeah,
which arrived 8 years ago, 7 years ago. The first observation of an interstellar object, which passed worryingly close. It went between the sun and Mercury and then swooped around the sun and emerged back somewhere near the orbit of Mars, I think. And that's the beginning of our observations of interstellar threats. So,
I missed on top of my watch later list, or very near it, is one which mentions, this is YouTube videos, that Oumuamua actually decelerated as it came towards the sun.
Anomalies to do with its momentum.
Yeah, and this is I heard briefly Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about this, and it appears to have defied what you would expect comet objects to do, and so I think that's really interesting. Yeah,
it is to be investigated. Yeah, unfortunately, well, yeah. Yes. So at the moment, we constitute the only known example of the universe knowing about itself. And then you come to the concept of maybe that consciousness, which is us, modifying the universe in some way, changing its future by manipulation.
I have quite a few friends who are in the UFO world, and the opinion of a quadrant of my friends is that the universe is teeming with life, and that we are on the edge of finding out about that. And so we that doesn't make it any less interesting, finding out about the universe, and indeed points to perhaps a very interesting future.
Oh, well, I mean, one of the points of the utility of this idea of maintaining awareness of interstellar threats is that it profits a long-term goal for humanity, which puts other things into the perspective they deserve. And that can be only healthy for the mental health of the world. But that is a transient state, and it only lasts until we discover life somewhere else. And when we do that, then it's all back to hedging bets and saying, well, we don't really have to look after ourselves that much, do we? So I'm going to invade.
While we are throwing around those type of ideas, there is a concept which has been around for quite a number of years now, which states that the idea that the elders of the universe will come and visit us, and give us wisdom, could be turned on its face to say that we could be the elders of the universe. We could be the start of a galactic empire, which is founded by humans rather than some mystical alien which comes in the future.
Yeah, that's the potential, isn't it?
We'll find out. I don't think that the others, if there are others, they probably don't take much interest in species that haven't figured out how to defy gravity. But once you have, you probably become of interest partly because you become a threat.
Anyway, we digress.
Wait, no, yes.
It'd be nice to live a bit longer and see how it turns out. There you go.
Well, thank you, friends, for your attendance this morning, and interesting discussion, David, although we may disagree on some things. And Patsy, next week is something different.
Oh yes, hold on.
Tell.
I thought I had it completely in front of me, and it's not just almost in front of me.
Let's hear an introduction
Right.
to the inclusive mental health platform for women and non-binary individuals by Gwyntofer.
Ah, well done. Thank you very much.
Did you all hear all that?
No.
An introduction to At Ease. That's all one word, At Ease. The inclusive mental health platform for women and non-binary individuals by Gwyntofer.
I only received that title last night, so sorry it's arrived at high speed, but it sounds very interesting anyway, doesn't it?
And then on March the 15th, in red, possibly in dispute, interviewing Marion Liebman. What do you think about that, Marion?
Oh, I probably need to do a little bit of preparation.
Oh, yeah.
But I haven't started yet. I'm a bit exercised by the fact that I don't really know I haven't got time to kind of sort out lots of photos as people previously have done. But maybe that doesn't matter too much. I've probably got one or two. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.